This is 2000 points of Space Marines, and I'm gonna paint all of this in a few days. I spent tens of hours assembling, basing and priming these miniatures, and now it's time to make them ready for the tabletop. Now you guys know that I have like 60 white Space Marines that took me more than half a year to finish, but this time I'm gonna be way faster. Today is Monday and I hope to finish all of these miniatures by Friday. Until I did not. And to do that, believe me, planning is necessary. This is a test model that I painted, so I have a good idea on how to approach this project. Whenever you start a project this big, it's important for you to know exactly which steps you need to take to achieve this result. At the same time, you have to be happy with the result. Obviously, comparing this new Space Marine to my existing army, I like the old Space Marines way more. But I don't have fucking 6 months, so if I manage to paint all of these 47 miniatures like this, I'll be more than happy. But can I do it? So before we look at all of the steps to turn this into this, you might be asking, why the hell would you start with black for a white army? What are you, fucking stupid? Yes. In all seriousness, like this you can build multiple shades of grey and it will look more natural. At the same time, all of the unexposed parts will stay darker, which makes more sense. White and yellow are the most difficult colors to use on miniatures. This is because their coverage is terrible. And even though I used a paintbrush for my existing Space Marines, using airbrush for white and yellow will save you so much time. So now, looking at the entirety of the plan, you can get the idea of how to approach this project. You don't want to think about which colors to use or which steps come first, so writing down a step-by-step list is the way to go. There are some outliers, of course, there always are, so you will have to use some different paints for them. And the outliers in this case are these two miniatures. So I have barely even started. This took me like 5 hours to finish, and this is just the white, and I have built some nice volume here. Of course, additional steps are needed to make it pop, but for now we will focus on purple. And there are basically two options to do that. I can either mask off the rest of the body of this Space Marine and, you know, just airbrush the purple here and on his kneecap, or I can use a paintbrush. And even though airbrush would be possibly faster, I am pretty sure that I would stain the white and that would be just a whole lot of trouble. So let's do paintbrush. And so I did. Even though purple parts of the armor are way smaller than the white, painting them with your paintbrush takes a lot of time. Focusing on time-saving tools like airbrush, masking tape, dry brushing, etc. is always worth it. But if you don't have the access or you can't use them for some reason, you just have to hustle. I assume that you know how to base coat stuff, so let's move to... Unfortunately, we still have a load of stuff to base coat on these Space Marines, and we will have to use paintbrush again. Luckily, the armor is now base coated, so now we have to base coat the rest. So we will start with black. Now you will see some of the issues with painting white armies. When you spray everything with black, you can leave some parts just as they are and that's it. You don't have to worry about it. If you are spraying everything with white, almost all parts will have to be touched by your brush at some point. It doesn't help that when you make a mistake, painting white over black is a painful experience. What I realized right now is that I'm gonna base coat everything, every single color right now, except for metallics, of course, and then I'm gonna use oil wash to shade everything. So this might take a while, because I'm gonna apply all of the colors at once on every single miniature instead of using single color and apply it on all of the 47 miniatures. But sometimes it's better to see progress on every single miniature, so you keep yourself motivated. And going forward, motivation was exactly what I needed, because a disaster was about to happen. But until then, let's talk about what will help you the most when painting armies. If you are optimizing speed and quality, there are several things that you can consider. First, pick an easy army to paint. The best option is to pick an army that you like and that doesn't have too many details. An example of that is something like Tyrannids or Skeleton Army, where you can easily use washes, contrast paints and airbrush, and it will look just great. If you have too many details, it's a total time sink. And you know, Space Marines are not the best option. But anyway, there are still multiple things that you can do to be faster. 2. Limit the number of paints. Now going back to the beginning, I have used 3 different grays, and I think that if I used just one, it wouldn't make a real difference, as you will see. Also, if there are multiple leather parts on the miniature, just pick one brown and roll with it. You really don't have to use 4 different shades of brown, but if you really want to make it spicy, use what you already have on the palette to save your time. Similarly, I am painting purity seals and tabards on my Space Marines, and I will pretty much use the same color for that. If you are constantly reaching for new paints, it will take you way more time. Number 3. Use opaque colors. Do you know what takes more time than applying a color? Applying it twice. Because of that, you should pick paints that cover well. Since white is definitely not one of them, I used an airbrush. For example, black, brown, red and blue are ideal for this, and you likely won't have any problem. Picking cream or yellow colors and applying them over black is problematic, so you should plan for that. 4. What makes the difference? You wanna focus on painting the face, since that is the center of attention, and you don't have to care about the feet as much. For the same reason, you don't really have to paint details that are hidden, like little straps under the backpacks or the area near the crotch. If you are starting with a black primer, it's even better, since leaving those details black will make them less visible. Additionally, if you have some important centerpieces that everyone is gonna look at, spend more time on them instead of regular army men. In this case, I'm giving more attention to my Dreadnought and Blade Guard veterans. 5. Leave the mistakes as they are. But this applies only if the mistakes are not noticeable. For example, if you accidentally drag your brush somewhere you didn't wanna, but it's barely noticeable, you can either fix it, which will take you your precious time, or you can leave it as it is and move on. If it's a big mistake, then go ahead and fix it. But being a perfectionist here will make you go insane, so keep that in mind. 6. Use United Color Scheme. Now I am a bit guilty here because I have these 2 outliers which are essentially gonna end up black, but for the most part, the entire army is the same. And this is important, because you don't have to think about it, you can use the same colors, there is no room for decisions, and that's what you want here. You can make some units a bit different, but still, it's pretty similar. For example, Blade Guard helmets are gonna be red, because, well, who the f knows why? Maybe it represents blood they went through in their battles, or some other metaphor that your English teacher would really be proud of. Anyway, okay, so it's day 3 of this challenge, and I am not sure anymore that I am gonna be able to do it, because at this point I got just half of the entire army base coated, so that is like 9 Blade Guard veterans, then 15 intercessors and 1 dreadnought, and then there are 9 outriders left to be base coated. Also 6 eradicators and some more characters, and I really didn't expect this base coating stage to take so long, but hopefully I'm gonna finish all of this today. Then I'm gonna spray them with gloss varnish and we are gonna finally shade them. And that's what I did. First I applied black to all miniatures in one fell swoop, and right after that I went for brown. By the way, if you think that sometimes the layer is way too thick, you are right. It's definitely not worth it to apply multiple thin layers here, and it's still not too thick to ruin the details. I actually think that the current community obsession over very thin layers of paint is unjustified, since you can work with thicker layers, but you have to spread them. But that's a whole different topic. As I painted more and more, my motivation started to crumble. Light at the end of the tunnel was the only thing that kept me going. So yeah, now I didn't manage to base coat all of the miniatures, but today is the day. So I will finish these guys, and these are a little bit special because they have these cloaks, and I will airbrush them and use a special tool I have. And after that, let's shade them! Yay! Seeing all of my Space Marines base coated gave me the necessary push to go further. At this point I'm 2 days off the schedule, and I'm just about to begin shading. To let my oil wash flow into recesses easily and to protect my miniatures, I am using gloss varnish, and believe me, this will be useful. To mix your own oil wash, you need to get an oil paint and a white spirit. I cannot tell you exactly what is the ratio between the two, but since I wanted all the recesses to be really dark and pronounced, I went a little bit thicker. One of the main advantages of using oil wash is that you can clean it up later by reactivating it with a white spirit. Because of that, I am not afraid to cover the entire miniature, and I will simply wipe it off where it's supposed to be clean. I have noticed that sometimes the oil wash was a bit too thick, but I didn't think too much of it, since I can still fix it, right? Now it was getting late, but I still wanted to fix some miniatures before the next day. Looking at this dreadnought, I'm using pure white spirit and this eyeshadow applicator to do it. And clearly it works great. Armor is clean and the wash stays in the recesses. I decided to go for a few more miniatures, but I left the majority for the next day. It's not like something bad is about to happen, right? Right? I f***ed up. I didn't manage to clean off excess oil wash from all the miniatures yesterday, so I decided that I will do it today, and overnight it got really dry and I have a real issue getting it off. So that means that I have to use a lot of pressure, and that leads to scraping off some of the paint. Believe me when I say that the varnish is really super important. So now one miniature takes me around 20 minutes to clean off. And that means that I will have to basically spend like 2 days to get it done. There is no way around it, so let's do this. And as you can expect, it's been a long grind. I was desperate. I knew that the Space Marines are not gonna be as clean as my old army, and that these are gonna be more rough and weathered. If the oil wash wasn't so thick, and if I dealt with it immediately, this wouldn't happen. I could also use something like streaking grime or panel liner to get the perfect ratio straight out of bottle. But the damage has been done, and for the next 2 days, this is all I could do. Those couple of days, I really didn't feel like getting in front of camera. On one hand, the oil wash was mostly off, on the other, there was still much to fix. I went back to acrylics and started covering the worst parts. At that point, I decided to do all of these things right now, at once. I also made the choice to make my edge highlights really thick, so they stand out and so they cover the mistakes I made. Needless to say, I had to grind once more. So finally, after all this time, we are at the finish line, and the last step is metallics. Before we do that, however, we still have to varnish these models. The single best matte varnish that you can get is the AK Interactive Ultra Matte Varnish. It's so powerful, it will even erase all the shine from metallics. That's why we spray it now. The 3 metallics that have been chosen are steel, copper and gold. Combining these spots will guarantee that one layer of paint is enough and that the finish is super shiny. In the case of steel, I can build dark shades and highlights as well. And as you can see, it works. Combining Vallejo metal color with regular metallics is just great. On some gold parts I used gloss Agrax Earthshade, but I didn't spend too much time on that. For the steel parts I first painted steel with black ink and highlighted that with pure steel. Since this is the last stage, I was extra careful so I don't have to fix anything. But even so, on bigger parts go for dry brushing. After 2 more days of painting metallics, our 10-day journey is over. Hit that fucking subscribe button.